things that Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear. Sometimes people get into this mode where you don't really want to hear what's good for you, but people on the outside looking in think you do need to hear it. So I got 10 things that I found on the internet that Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear. We're going to explore some middle ground. I'm going to give my opinion on why I agree with them, and I'll offer some pushback as well on each and every one. Let's get into it. Okay, so I got 10 things here in my notes that Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear. So I'll kind of offer my opinion from both sides. So for the first one that I have here, it says, middle grounds exist. It doesn't always have to be pro this or anti that. So my opinion on this, where I can actually rock with this statement, is that extremes to anything always leaves very little space and tolerance for middle ground. Where in my opinion, that's where a lot of things could be resolved. And it's kind of where American society and a bunch of other societies are starting to look like this have gotten to, where it's you're either all of this thing or you're all of that. Or if you're not all of what I want you to be, then you must be all of the other thing. And now I don't like you. So where I offer a little bit of pushback is when it comes to brand identity. For businesses and public figures, a strong, clear stance can help build a distinct brand identity. Also, marketing. In marketing, a strong stance can create a compelling message that resonates with your target audience. And lastly, it's when it comes to ethics and moral clarity. On issues of ethics and morality, a firm stance can reflect integrity and principled leadership. It shows that you are committed to your values and you're not swayed by convenience or popular opinion. In my opinion, it's the individuality fueled societal pro, anti, this or that that's kind of soiling things. Number 2 on my list of things that Europeans don't feel like Americans are ready to hear just simply says, tipping is stupid. Just pay your staff a proper living wage. Here's where I can get on board with this. Definitely pay your people. It's the US, you can do it. In the video I made on the tipping culture in the US, I said that I had witnessed people close to me suffer through being at the mercy of relying on tipping to make a living. Customers didn't ask to be responsible for your employees, and your employees shouldn't have to choose between putting on a circus and feeding their children. It's pathetic in my opinion. Where I can offer a little bit of pushback on this is, I wouldn't say tipping is stupid. It just shouldn't be it shouldn't be the standard of earning wages and making a living for people. Tipping is cool when it's simply just a gesture of appreciation and nothing more. That's it. Number 3 on my list of things Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear. It's neither normal nor okay to have to go bankrupt just to go to school or go to the hospital. I fully agree with this. It's the young people coming up that'll be the ones to run the country. Why wouldn't you want them to have the best chance at getting it right? Why would you want to make it difficult for them to become as qualified as possible in any field? An early 20-something being in 5- and 6-digit debt before they even have a career is crazy. Injuries and health problems are arguably a part of life. No one should be in debt from life just happening. Pushback on this? I got none. Let's move on to the next thing that Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear. You actually have less freedom than most of the world. Your country is pay to play. Subjectively speaking, that argument could be made. For myself, I'm comfortable with what freedoms look like outside of the US, but that's just me. Some people like what freedom looks like outside of Germany, where I live. Many folks say Germans are bound by taxes and rules. So although I wouldn't speak for the world as the way this person did, it is still fair to say that the US is kind of a pay-to-play kind of country. So if I had any pushback on this, it would be that Americans are emotionally attached to the idea of freedom because of the independence gained in 1776. That might have been the first nationwide pep rally phrases that the country had. I don't think anyone even cares to define it or apply it to the current body of the nation nowadays, though I wish they would. Next thing Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear, it just says having your national flag everywhere is ridiculous to most of us. I can definitely see where it can be concerning, in my opinion, when it comes to the flag thing. It does seem kind of bizarre to constantly remind people that live in the same place you live that you live where they live too. It just seems a little crazy to me. So yeah, I can see how this comes off as goofy. It's a little bit goofy to me too. I don't do it, but most countries that I've visited do it. And that's my pushback on this. The US is bigger, so you're going to see it more, no doubt. By only the numbers, if a fourth of the US did it versus a fourth of any country in Europe, most of them did it, what do you think that would look like? Just by numbers alone. The next thing Europeans don't feel like Americans are ready to hear just says, you're very loud as tourists. Speak at a normal volume, please. Yeah, I can see this one. Being an avid public transportation user, I can confirm that Americans are loud in public. But so are locals. Young people notwithstanding, I give it to them. Germans are loud too. Other foreigners I hear, they be loud too. My assumption is that people might just have a sensitivity to American dialect. They just don't like the way Americans talk. Also, this presumed bravado Americans are said to have probably fuels this a little bit too.
Americans always coming over here and thinking they can do whatever they want to do, like, talk.
Something tells me that at that same volume that's annoying you, if they were speaking your language and actually doing grace to it, you probably wouldn't be as aggravated as you are. In fact, you'd probably be a little bit impressed. Next on my list of things that Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear is, y'all really put too much importance on race. This is definitely a hard agree. I mean, they really do. And I couldn't be more over it. Everything has to come down to race. It needs to be expressed on job applications. Census bureaus always needing it. The news always pointing it out. Political figures driving it home. Don't you ever forget that you're Black or Hispanic or Native or of Asian descent because Uncle Sam said so. Pushback? Again, I got none for this one. Next on the list of things that Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear says, you may be shocked by this, but the purpose of life is not to be entertained by something or someone. Okay, so in my opinion, the concept of this has grown wild with the onset of influencer and content creator culture. Nowadays, everyone wants to be the next it person. Everyone wants to be the focus of attention. Seeing others gain notoriety and fame and fortune by doing relatively very little looks too good to a society of people whose ultimate goal is to make it. So what we have is everyone giving it a shot at being entertaining. Unfortunately now though, it's turned into a one-up game. Everybody wants to one-up the last person. My pushback on this though is, it's the US, bro. Everything is entertainment, sports, film and movies, modeling, music, etc. It's historically and still kind of known for being the land of opportunity. Entertainment culture just won't be going anywhere anytime soon, unfortunately. And it's not all bad. Moving on to the next thing on the list that Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear. Your car-dependent infrastructure is terrible. You shouldn't be forced to own a car just to be able to go anywhere. That one's a little loaded, but I'll give it to them. I'll respond to it anyway. So here's where I can get on board with this and where I agree. Public transportation in the US exists, but it's only really worth mentioning in some major cities. NYC, Chicago, San Francisco. In other places, such as where I'm from, it's considerably less existent. Considerably. I remember some years prior to me leaving, they built something called the Metrolink back in St. Louis. It's likely called something else now, but it was basically just a straight line that went east to west and west to east St. Louis. It would have helped me out tremendously if there was something comparable to what we got here in Germany. A little bit of pushback that I do have for this is, it's the US, man. The US is big, bro. Not that I think it couldn't be done eventually, but do you know how many tracks that would be? Connecting all states? Holy crap. If they did attempt to implement a rail system, as in fully usable, where someone, if they wanted to, could go coast to coast swiftly and in kind of an effortless manner, similar to how the ICE train does here in Germany. Wouldn't be done in my lifetime. Europe didn't just pop up with it. Hey, but I wish public transportation was more of a thing and that people didn't have to lean so much into owning a vehicle. I do. So the next one is rather long, so pardon me, I'm gonna be looking down while I read it directly off my notes. And it goes, you're treating a 300-year-old piece of paper as the end-all be-all of American civilization. It's not a perfect document. The founding fathers weren't some demigods. In fact, the Magna Carta was a big influence on the founding fathers for both the Declaration of Independence as well as the Constitution. It's okay to revise the Constitution. It's not some perfect thing. If it was, how come the founding fathers forgot to put the abolishing of slavery or women's rights to vote at least in the Bill of Rights. My point is, while the 2A may have made sense in a time where there was a threat of invasion from the English king and American settlers needed to have organized militias to be ready to defend their land, in today's world, y'all are putting way too much emphasis on damn guns to the detriment of your kids. Guns are not something you need to protect. Your kids are. I agree with this one, and I don't have any pushback. I don't want to try and mess with it. If I try to improve on it, it's just going to ruin what he said. And I agree with what he said. Let's move on. So I have a bonus one here that I didn't make part of the list, but I thought it was noteworthy and worth mentioning. And I'm just going to read it here. It says, "The optimism of the American people, it's a double-edged sword, but it's really amazing how, as a country, it collectively can believe that no matter how effed up a situation is, it's just a temporary setback, and tomorrow everything will be great." Maybe that trait is temporary. Maybe it's because all in all, they've had a pretty lucky history. But as long as it's there, it's admirable. So this person is pointing out how Americans know how to stay optimistic, generally speaking, I'm assuming. And for them, they witnessed that optimism applied across the board as a general population. So no agreeing to it or disagreeing or pushing back on this one. I just thought it was noteworthy that this person was speaking on American optimism in a list of things that Europeans don't think Americans are ready to hear. Just thought it was noteworthy. But speaking of optimism, have you yourself ever noticed how Americans carry optimism versus Europeans or anybody else in the world? I personally wouldn't have noticed if anybody didn't point it out, but what do you think? Have you ever noticed it? Let's talk about it down in the comments. The next thing on my list that Europeans don't feel like Americans are ready to... Try to hurt my name. I can't even see it. Bad to work. Bad to work. Bad to work. Bad to work. These lights get hot quick. Quickly hot. Hot quick. Quickly hot. Have any of you ever... It just shouldn't be a standard for earning a living and earning wages and making a living. Finally.